pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to the Chicano Chronicles. I'm your host, Emiliano Villa. And today we're going to talk about America's perverted doctrines. The doctrines that we grew up on that really don't apply. The land of the free. America's never been the land of the free. Since the inception of this great nation, we've enslaved black people. Since the inception of this great nation, we have done everything in our power to genocide the Native American population as well as the Mexican population. These things are historically factual. So land of the free, home of the brave, there is no justice for all. That doesn't apply. I wonder what was here first. American propaganda or German propaganda? Nazi Germany propaganda or Nazi America propaganda? So you have to understand, in 1776, when this nation was formed, white men, European Americans, started writing things. They meant what they said, and they said what they meant. But they meant it for white people. They meant it for European Americans. We have to understand the context of where these doctrines are created and how they were used as propaganda throughout the centuries. Land of the free, we are the most incarcerated nation in the world. We have more people incarcerated per capita, and again, I would say across the board, than any other nation in the history of mankind. So, land of the free, propaganda, perverted doctrines. This is what we're talking about today. When we talk about the lynching that happened during and after the Emancipation Proclamation, when we talk about the dastardly things that were done to black people during that time from 1600 all the way to 1800, right? Even 1900. We tend to talk about black people and the black plight because America doesn't have enough room to talk about red people. They don't have enough room to talk about brown people. They don't have enough room in their hearts, enough empathy to talk about yellow people. Now, why am I using colors? Because today, what white America wants to do, and again, black America has fallen in line with the propaganda and the racism. They were supposed to be fighting it. Martin Luther King was at the head of the race, right? Fighting white racism in America. And one of the biggest tools of propaganda in America is the census. So if you look at the census historically, the first category that they put up there is white. Nothing else. There's no European American after that. There's no Scottish American. There's no Irish American. Just white. And what they're doing is they're unifying the white race under a banner of a color. That's racism in America. When you guys wonder, when did colors start? When did people start identifying each other by color? Well, that's when they did it. When they created the census, white people wanted to unify white people. They don't want to put Scottish American, European American, Irish American, German American, because the list would have been long. So they unified that whole European culture, white culture, by saying one word, white. There's no more colors after that historically. It's changed now, but historically it was African American. It wasn't black. It was African American, Haitian, Jamaican. Then it went down the line. Brown? Oh, Hispanic, Latino. They use all the different blacks and all the different browns and all the different yellows so they can divide those cultures so that make sure that the Japanese don't get involved with the Chinese and the Chinese don't get involved with the Taiwanese and the Taiwanese don't get involved with it was well done. And so we went hundreds of years by that census of white people just using that one color for them to unify them. Today, there are 5 races. This is what black and white people are trying to sell us today. Racism is getting worse. It's not getting better. Division is getting worse. It's not getting better. And Donald Trump has nothing to do with it. This is ingrained in American culture. This is ingrained in the doctrines of America. So when white people try to, we got over it and Donald Trump brought it, but no, he didn't. It's been here underneath the surface all this time. Land of the free. Land of the free again. We are the most incarcerated country in the world. One nation under God. One nation under God. The Pledge of Allegiance was written during a time where there was still slavery. Slavery exists today. It's just not black. It's brown. let me give you an idea of propaganda, right? And the reason that I used the Pledge of Allegiance is because Nazi Germany had the same thing. Nazi Germany had to propagate their people to hate, just like America's doing today. So in order for Nazi Germans to look at their fellow human being, their fellow German that were of Jewish religion, for them to look at them as animals, for them to hate them the way they did, and to be able to do the things that they did and look the other way, while Germany did some pretty awful things to its neighbor, because you have to understand, Germany was a Christian nation also. So the things that Germany was doing during that time, they also had Catholic priests blessing them. They also had Christians blessing them. They had synagogues in Germany. So religion was huge in Nazi Germany, just like it is in Nazi America today. But it's used to pervert. It's used to confuse. It's not used as a Christian doctrine no more, because the fallacies of human nature, the fallacies of brotherhood, the fallacies of religion, and these doctrines prove it. So as we make all our children every morning when they go to school understand this, understand the impact and the level of propaganda that America does every day. When a child goes to school every day, he has to say the Pledge of Allegiance. He has to lie to himself. He has to lie to himself. I pledge allegiance to the flag, one nation under God, with liberty and justice for all. Those are three of the biggest lies in the history of mankind. In the inception of this country, we were enslaving black people. We were genociding red people. We were genociding Mexicans in the West Coast, which we're going to bring to light. We're going to tell you about the lynchings that happened in Texas, the lynchings that happened on the West Coast that nobody likes to talk about because nobody has time for black or brown racism. I pledge allegiance to the flag, one nation under God, with liberty
and justice for all. And working together, we can make sure that we do. Thanks, everybody.
They call him the deporter-in-chief. And that was Barack Obama, the first president, the first quasi-black president in the history of America. And what does he do? He deports more brown people than his white racist predecessor, George Bush. That's how deep racism has gotten in the black community today. They didn't learn to fight. They learned to become. And that's what we're seeing today. That's why racism is so prevalent in America, is because black leaders have dropped the ball. And now those black leaders aren't fighting racism, they're perpetuating it. I'm gonna give you personal stories of black people that have done some pretty racist malarkey to me. So I grew up playing basketball, and we used to whoop everybody's rear endage. Black, white, blue, brown. Give a damn who you were. We were ballers. The racism that I experienced growing up was, one, if you're part of a black team and you're the only brown person or white person, you're going to see discrimination to the third degree. You're going to see that exclusion. Just like they excluded black people and now they do brown people in football, baseball, all that stuff. The way white people used to exclude them today. Even Chicanos, some of the comments, you see Chicanos that have sold their soul and despise what they see in the mirror. They're like, there's no 6'7" Mexicans, as if that's what it takes, right? Well, there's some pretty short white people in the NBA. There's some pretty short black people in the NBA. So that's not a qualifier. Sometimes heart, the corazón, has a lot to do with athletics. And Chicano is nothing but puro corazón, nothing but pure heart. Don't sell yourself short, Chicano. Don't fall for the okie doke that you're not qualified to be a football player, that you're not qualified to be a basketball player. But let's go back to my story. Growing up, I was that Mexican in a basketball team that was the only brown guy. So them keeping the ball away from me, stopping my point average, them not shooting balls, stopping my assist average. I didn't have the numbers. You can imagine the same in football with a black quarterback or black players that allow a guy to get tackled, a white running back or whatever. It's there. The racism is there. We played in a basketball league. Now, at that point, it was puro Chicano. Then in my neighborhood, the city league, recreation. So we would all play each other from different areas in our neighborhoods. In the late 90s, black people started coming into our neighborhoods to play, and they started going out because they could. Before that, black people were like Chicanos. They didn't like to go out of their neighborhoods for a lot of reasons. But the late 90s, you started seeing black players go and drive. We would go to Huntington Beach all the time. We would go to Malibu, and we would run those white boys, and they hated us because we would go in there. We would make them look like neophytes, right? In that league that we had, we used to run some game on some people. Black, white, doesn't matter what you were. So when these black players started coming in, one year, the city hired black referees. So what goes on in these recreational games is we contract with a referee organization to come in and ref the season. And this year, for some reason, because we want to be inclusive, we allowed a black reffing organization to come in and start reffing. And the way they ref these games was ridiculous. We had to get them out, because they let the black players just run roughshod over him. There would be one black player, and he would be at the free throw line almost every point. And these refs were laughing about it. It was funny. Now we were getting called for everything. So the racism, that's stark racism right there. This last game that we had with those refs, there was this one guy, and they tried to make him look like they're all Jordan, right? So every time this guy would go for a layup or whatever, if you touched him or breathed on him, a foul, and he'd go to the 3-point line. And my guys looked at me because they knew that I had connections within the city, and I did. And that was the last time that reffing organization reffed our games. And I told the black refs after they were laughing, and I said, you guys are calling every foul that we're gonna have to get you out of here. This is racism. And I explained it to them. And I went back with a little history, and they denied it just like white people do. Black racists are no different than white racists. Okay, they do the same things. They'll deny it tooth and nail, just like white people. So he denied it, but I didn't need to convince him. All I needed to do was convince the city recreation manager, and they were no longer there. They racist the wrong basketball player, the wrong basketball team, thinking that we're all cholos and gang members, not realizing that we were also involved in city politics and city organization and management, which this is why you need to do it, Chicano. This is why you need to run your cities. It's because there are Mexicans and Latinos and Hispanics that are allowing people to come in and run roughshod over your children. White administrators, white teachers, white principals that are suspending your kids in record numbers, expelling your kids, finding those ones that have the cabeza and, we don't want him to succeed. So let's make sure that boy's not going to graduate, or he's going to get expelled. We find something wrong with him. That's racism in contemporary America, RICA. That's critical race reality, not theory, not theoretical, real. I'm going to tell you a little bit about democratic racism and how they've perverted their doctrines. It's not just right wing, it's Democrats also. There was an organization that I joined, Progressive Democrats of America, run by a man named Alan Minsky. I was brought in by a woman, a human being to the third degree, great person. Her name was Jan Crick. And we'll have her on the show at some point. She's already agreed. She knows what I'm doing. But she invites me to go to the Progressive Democrats of America and give a talk on racism, the ins and outs, the nooks and crannies, knowing that they needed it. Because the Progressive Democrats in America had a problem. They were all white. Alan Minsky would only give positions to white Jewish people because they called themselves Progressive Democrats of America, but everyone at the top was and I say Jewish, but I'm going to say Israeli American, because I refuse to identify any person by their denomination, their religious denomination. I don't go around saying, yeah, he's a Christian. Oh, he's a Muslim. Oh, he's Jewish. But the Jewish like to do that. They like to, oh, we're Jewish. Well, that's your religion. It's not what you are. And so this progressive Democrats of America was filled with Israeli Americans, some of the most racist people I've ever met. Alan Minsky had power. He was in charge of the NPR or public broadcasting. Wouldn't remember which one, so don't get me on it. And be careful with these people because you say one thing wrong and the way that they go after you is legally. I told you about this before. So I go in there. Jan Crick takes me in there to teach and to what she wanted to do. That was the first time that I did a radio show. And I did it for the Progressive Democrats of America. And it was pretty much like this, but I realized that there were no Chicanos in the Progressive Democrats of America. And I found that out pretty quickly. So I was talking in a closet. I was talking in a room by myself. They didn't know what I was talking about. So I had to change the format of the show. And I had to start addressing white racism within the Progressive Democrats of America. They didn't like that. Even Democrats don't like truth to power. There are many Democrats who use racism, strategically. And that's what Alan Minsky was about. And so I go in there. I start telling them about, it's amazing that all I see is white faces. You guys are a progressive, democratic organization. You have no colored people in here. And I didn't mean exactly. They had one black person that I knew of. I think it was one brown dude that used to do all their technical stuff. So they didn't just have him around to be because he was a nice looking. No, he was there as their slave. He was there every time we would go to a party or an organization. He was there doing all their mass media for free, I would imagine. And you could tell that these people they didn't like brown people. They didn't like being around. Whenever I would go to an organization, I usually sit by myself. It was that bad. And so when I started teaching them, I could see all the problems. And so I wanted to address them. And so I admonished Alan Minsky in front of everybody. It is appalling that you guys are progressives, supposedly fighting racism, supposedly being progressive, forward-thinking people, yet you guys are staunch racists. And he apologized in front of everybody. I'm sorry, I want to outreach more and I want to do well. Let me help you, I told him. But he didn't want it. See, he was giving lip service, and they were faking their humanity. They don't want Mexican. They still today, I don't know who they got in there. Now, I called one of them this morning because I want to give them a voice like they didn't give me. That's not what Chicanos are about. So I wanted to give them a voice. So I called Mike Fox of the Progressive Democrats of America. He's going to talk to Alan, and hopefully we'll have him on here someday so that he can maybe tell you the truth and say if I'm lying or nothing was true. That's not going to happen. He's not going to want to have that conversation. One day he told Jan Crick, and this is where they do it, right? They alienate you. It's called alienation. Mm-hmm. And it's when they don't want to, just straight out say, you smelly Mexican, get out of our face. We don't want you here. Instead of saying that, they just treat you bad. And they alienate you. And this is what Alan Minsky and his upper echelon did to me. So they set up a meeting, and I was going to go in there, and I was going to introduce myself and tell them I'm with the Progressive Democrats of America. They gave me a position. Well, they said they were going to give me a position. Never happened. And so I'm going to talk about racism. So they scheduled a meeting, and it's Zoom, all Zoom. At that point, I think the COVID was going on, so it was all Zoom. And so I go to the Zoom meeting, and they have introduce everybody, and they have their little talk, and then they introduce somebody else, and they introduce somebody else. And me and Jan are messaging each other. You could do that on a Zoom. When are they going to call me? She goes, well, Alan said, he'll call you in a little bit. Okay, don't worry. So again, when it's getting late, I was like, well, they're running out of time. She goes, oh no, he's going to call you. He told me. Jan Crick is an angel. She has no bad bones in her body. She's an angel on earth. She doesn't see people. She doesn't see color. She got great stories that she would teach to Chicanos, Chicanas. She was a teacher. And we're going to bring her on here. We're going to have some of those stories, hopefully. And Alan Minsky slapped her in the face, metaphorically. He lied to her, straight to her face. Made her put her face up on that Zoom, thinking that she was going to be the catalyst for something great. And he lied to her. Didn't even address me, didn't even introduce me. She says, I'm gonna message him right now. And she messaged him, he doesn't get back to her. She messages him again, doesn't get back to her. What he didn't know is who I was. What he didn't know is how American I was and how I demand my rights as an American. I don't ask for them. I don't beg for them. I demand being treated like an American. And so I spoke up by messaging everybody. When am I going to talk, Alan? Why would you invite me here, Alan, and just lie to Jan's face? And the women in that meeting, they started taking notice. What is this guy saying? What is he saying? And one of them said, what are you saying? And I brought it out. I put it on the table. While Mr. Minsky said he was going to invite me to talk about racism today. And for some reason, he's silencing my voice now. And then Alan, oh no, we were going to, but this happened, and there he goes, right? And that's when I admonished him about his racism. And that was the last time I ever went on that show or in that organization, because they don't want me there. And I don't stay where I'm not wanted. That's not who I am. And so they let me know they don't want this Mexican around them. This Mexican. Not knowing that I wasn't a Mexican. Do you think he made amends? Do you think he said, man, I messed up. Emiliano, I really messed up. No. So it turns out that in the county that I had moved to, all white, very racist, I'll tell you, I tried to get on public radio, and guess who was the director that wouldn't return my call? That didn't have no Chicanos on that public broadcasting station. Alan Minsky. So this dude has been running roughshod over Chicanos for a long time. And that's public broadcasting. If you think that NPR and we've tried to get on there. If you think that they allow everybody to talk because it's public, you'd be wrong. Right? Left-wing media, we've tried to, again, I'll say it again, we've tried to get on Rachel Maddow. We try to get on left-wing media. We try to get on Richie Rashad of TYT. We try to get Cenk Uygur to give us a voice. It's not happening. Even progressives know that they need slaves. As I was growing up, I used to think to myself, how could they be so racist to black people? What happened to all those abolitionists? What happened to all those people that were fighting against those racist white people? How could they allow it? Because there had to be judges. The president of the United States was Abraham Lincoln at one point. We had some other progressive presidents. Why didn't they just make it illegal to? Because they didn't want to. Because they perpetuated it. See, racism doesn't exist because there's the Confederacy or because there's right wing, because of Donald Trump, because of the Republican Party. They perpetuate it, but they don't want to abolish it because it serves all white people, left and right. So left-wing media, again, it's what they don't say. It's that they silence certain segments of Americana, the American population, and those are brown people right now. Right wing, it's what they say. It's a lie. It's a saturation media of lies right in your face. Now I see how racism is perpetuated because it's not just the hateful right. It's not just the Confederacy. It was the left. It's the progressives. It's the Christians. It's the good white people that never wanted to undo it, never wanted to abolish it. If there was one true abolitionist, his name was John Brown. Look him up and see how far he went to abolish slavery.
But for all. A promise we made in the Declaration of Independence, that we are each endowed with the right to liberty and the pursuit of happiness.
Our forefathers wrote that in a document called the Declaration of Independence. And then they went home to their slaves. Chicano, you want to get involved? Listen up. There's 4 ways you could get involved. If you want to volunteer, this is where you go right here. Volunteer is for rallies, protests, hitting the streets on marches. That's what we need volunteers for. The mentorship program, we need volunteers. Do it through Patreon. Become a sponsor. Become an investor in what we're doing in the YouTube channel and our TikTok. We need that. Guess what? That's where we're going to make things happen, is that small investor, that $1 bill, that $5 bills. Let's do that. If you can't get off your couch, if you can't get out to the street, if you can't be a voice, be a sponsor. And the way you do that, right here. If you want to be an intern, this is where you go to be an intern. Interns, we need grips, we need production people, we need actors, we need actresses. You want to become involved in what we're doing on the backside? That's what opportunities are for. If you want to get involved in Chicano cinema, this is where it happens. Production, investment, whatever you want to go. Welcome back, Chicano. So right now we're going to talk about sports in America. Sports is one of the most racist aspects in America. It is one of the most exclusive aspects in America. I asked a young man the other day, do you know the history of sports, how racist it was? Didn't have any idea. He thought black men and women were in sports all the time. I asked another young man the other day, do you know that black people were not allowed to make movies? They were not allowed in Hollywood. He didn't know that either. So America is propagating. America's propagandizing. They've spent, again, if you listen to the Chicano Chronicles, we're going to tell you since 1987, America had to propagate because they can't go by their history. They can't continue with the hate. It's hard to sell hate. Hey, let's kill our brother. Hey, let's incarcerate millions of people. That's hard to sell. That's a hard sell. But if you got propaganda to help you, it becomes easier. When you got propaganda to teach you to hate, it becomes easier. So America has whitewashed all these historic things. And this is what the Chicano Chronicle does, is we speak truth to power, where you're not going to find it anywhere else, even on black radio stations. The other day I talked about, we were on a program with Democrats, and I said, Barack Obama deported more people than, no, he didn't. They're already lying about that. These are white Democrats. Yeah, Joe Biden turned his back on brown people and told them they should vote. No, he didn't. They literally had to go and search the internet for that footage of Joe Biden turning his back on brown people and telling them they should vote for Trump. We've shown that already. It's in one of our episodes. In sports, you have to understand that black people were not allowed to play in those reindeer games a long time ago. You didn't know that. As a Chicano, you could go back in history and the first black player, Jackie Robinson, you could go back and see those headlines. What you're not going to see, and what you won't see today, is headlines for Chicanos. The first Chicano football player, the first Chicano baseball player, the first Chicano basketball player, if there's even one. You're being excluded from the NBA and the NFL for a reason, not because you're short, like the Mexicans say, not because you don't have the skills, the way they've made you think, because you're a peon. How they could get you to think that, I don't know. The reason I'm saying this today is because I want you to know why you're excluded. Not because of your inability to do anything, but because racism runs rampant in sports. And they're not going to allow brown people until we stand up, until the Chicano stands up and says, you know what? I'm tired of seeing all black players in East LA College. The Chicano is, we are our own worst enemy. We are our own worst enemy. Who's the administration at East LA College that they would allow a black coach to run roughshod over our basketball program, where we just eliminate any possibility of opportunity for a Chicano that maybe has the gift of Caitlin Clark? We've just undid that. That doesn't exist for us. And that's only in East LA. There are other colleges, puro Chicano, and their programs are being run by black and white people, offering opportunity to black and white athletes and discriminating against Chicanos. In the city I grew up in, there was a college there. I was a football player also. I was a middle linebacker. And so, you know, some of my friends would play football at this junior college. And one of them came and we were talking. And he goes, yeah, the racism at that college is through the roof. What do you mean? That's Chicano College, puro Chicano. No, not the football program. The football program is run by this white old man that's a racist to the third degree. And I met him and that he was right. But let me tell you what I did. So when I heard this, I said, I'm gonna make shit happen. I do stuff. I'm not the Chicano that you're used to. And so I joined the football team and I got a position, middle linebacker, but I never played because there was a white boy that was, I guess, a better middle linebacker than I was, which he wasn't. And I am puro Chicano, so there was no problem with me making this squad. But then the racism starts, the exclusion. You see the Chicano receiver that is faster than the black receiver, but the black receiver is black. And to white people, there's nothing faster than a black man. So that stigma stopped that Chicano who would make plays. I mean, this guy was bad. And he would make plays for our team. And he was kind of the only one. But he wasn't a starter. He would come in as a second string and make plays where the first string black receiver wasn't making too many plays. So what I did is after I infiltrated the football team at Rio Hondo College and I found out all the facts, I wrote a story for the college paper. Do you think they printed that story? And I knew people in the college newspaper. I had a partner in there. He's the one that took it to the editor. Guess what the editor did? He took it to the head coach and he took it to the legal department at Rio Hondo College, and they threatened to sue me. Never published that article. I've been fighting the fight a long time, Chicano. I've done some pretty crazy things, and you're going to hear about them. That's why we started this. But sports in America, one of the most racist venues that have ever existed. But what I want you to do is I want you to see this clip of a man named Reggie Jackson. And he came on that interview and he said things that opened everybody's eyes to the reality. And I give him credit for that. But this is that interview.
The three of us wouldn't have an opportunity to play. How emotional is it for you to come back to a play that you played with one of the greatest teams around?
Alex, when people ask me a question like that, it's like coming back here is not easy. The racism that I played here, when I played here, the difficulty of going through different places where we traveled. Fortunately, I had a manager and I had players on the team that helped me get through it. But I wouldn't wish it on anybody. People said to me today, I spoke, and they said, you think you're a better person? You think you won when you played here in Concord? I said, you know, I would never want to do it again. I walked into restaurants and they would point at me and said, can't eat here. I would go to a hotel and they say, then can't stay here. We went to Charlie Finley's country club for a welcome home dinner and they pointed me out with the N-word. He can't come in here. Finley marched the whole team out. Finally, they let me in there. He said, we're going to go to the diner and eat hamburgers. We'll go where we're wanted. Fortunately, I had a manager, Johnny McNamara, that if I couldn't eat in the place, nobody would eat. We'd get food to travel. If I couldn't stay in a hotel, they'd drive to the next hotel and find a place where I could stay. Had it not been for Raleigh Fingers, Johnny McNamara, Dave Duncan, Joe and Sharon Rudy, I slept on their couch 3-4 nights a week for about a month and a half. Finally, they were threatened that they would burn our apartment complex down unless I got out. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. The year I came here, Bull Connor was the sheriff the year before. And they took minor league baseball out of here because in 1963, the Klan murdered 4 black girls, children, in 11, 12, 14 years old. at a church here and never got indicted. They were from the Klan. Life magazine did a story on them like they were being honored. I wouldn't wish it on anyone. At the same time, had it not been for my white friends, had it not been for a white manager, and Rudy, Fingers, and Duncan, and Lee Myers, I would have never made it. I was too physically violent. I was ready to physically fight some. I'd have got killed here because I'd have beat someone's ass, and you'd have saw me in an oak tree somewhere.
Reggie, I can't even imagine. It's awful you had to go through that, but appreciate you sharing the rawness and the honesty of it with our audience. I mean, really, it's.
We love you, Reg.
Yeah. Thank you.
Quick history lesson right there.
That's a great history lesson.
you.
Reggie Jackson.
So that's the reality of sports in America, people. So no, it's not because Chicanos are small or short. No. It's not because Chicanos don't have the merit or don't have the wherewithal to become sports stars. You just have to understand that white men, they want to make sure that white superiority is the soup of the day. And how can you claim superiority when you got black men taking over your football league, which has been done already? When you got black men taking over your NBA, your basketball league, it's been done already. Now, understand when it comes to chingazos, you're not going to deny the Chicano. So right now, we have the pound for pound best boxer in the world in a man named Canelo Alvarez. Mandingo Kryptonite, the Cinnamon, the Mexican Killer, the bad son of a bitch. That's Chicano. Stop it with the we can't. Stop it that we're not in football because we're not in basketball. You're selling your people out, Chicano, when you say that. I don't want to hear it no more. Unless you're Malinche. Which you could tell, the vatos that wrote that in, we're not, it's our fault because we're not men. You could smell the Malinche, the hatred, the self-hatred. And the funny thing is that up to the high school level, the studs, the jocks, they're black and brown. Almost every school that you go to in California, in the West Coast. And tell me if I'm not telling the truth. The jock, the bad dude, many times he's a Chicano. But something happens in that transition from high school to college. Chicanos get weeded out. And then college to pro, they get eliminated. It's by design, Chicano. Don't think it's not. And it's not your fault. So understand, sports in America, one of the most racist facets of this country, still is today. And this is why we're the slave culture, is because there's a lot of Chicanos that will fight you, that will fight his own people and tell you that, no, you're not qualified. Look at our comments. Look at our comments. 90% of them, I got to tell you, Chicano, I'm proud right now. I'm feeling good because 90% of our comments are puro Chicano. But look at the comments, because once in a while you hear a Chicano come in and just berate himself and berate us. Malinche, self-hatred, it's huge in the Chicano community. But racism is even huger in the sports industry. And we have to wake up to that. We have to start demanding our place. We have to go to East LA College and say, why are you allowing black athletes to use this as a springboard instead of Chicano athletes to use this as a springboard? Not just for basketball, but scholarships. Sports lead to scholarships. And we're taking away from that from our chavalos who don't have basketball programs, football programs. Not to speak of the WNBA. What opportunity are we giving our Chicanas to show their prowess as physical specimens? We got a lot of work ahead of us. We got a long journey ahead of us. We got a long way to go. And the first part of that is waking us up. And that's where we're at right now, is we're still waking up. Because even though you look at our podcast and we got almost 10,000 followers. That is a drop in the bucket. That's nothing. There are upwards of 63 million Chicanos in this country. And I say Chicano because Latino is part of us. Hispanic is part of us. Mexicano is part of the Chicano culture. We're not part of their culture. 63 million. And it's probably way more than that because of propaganda. Let's wake up and let's change this racism. Let's make opportunity abound and available for our chavalos or chavalas. That we've been propagated to sleep is inexcusable. That's inexcusable. It's time to wake up, Chicano. But let's end with this little piece of doctrine called the American Dream. That's a doctrine that's not allowed for me and you. Unless you think your American dream is owning a house. Unless you think your American dream is owning a car. Unless you think your American dream is being homeless. The thing is, Chicano, it's up to us to dream big. But you can't dream big when those doors are closed. When there's a cover over that glass ceiling. And a lot of you are saying, well, I'm too old. Well, we're not doing this for you. We're doing this for your kids, your children, your chavalos. So that when they want to dream big, they don't get ruined like you did. You have to understand self-hatred. There's a lot of aspects to it. And having to live your life as a slave, you want to take it out on somebody. You want to blame somebody. And you don't want your children to live a better life than you. I thought Chicanos were all about their kids. I thought, my kids. We have to teach our kids to dream big, to reach for the stars. You have to understand in education, anybody can learn math. Anybody can learn English. Anybody can learn science. What we need to start teaching is ambition. What we need to start teaching is drive. What we need to start teaching is initiative. And we need to start teaching it at 5 years old. Not when they're already in high school. Our forefathers gave it to us, but understand that sentence, it was God-given. It was not man-made. Because the man that wrote that, again, he went home to his slaves. So it wasn't his thought frame of mind. It was in his thoughts. There were blessings. That they had the idea to put that in a document. It's time for that document to come true. It's time for that rhetoric to happen. It's time for that doctrine to be practiced. Because the truth of the matter is, it shouldn't have to be said or written. But the truth is that all women, all men are created equal. Endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, least among these, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I want to thank you for joining the Chicano Chronicles. I am your host, Emiliano Villa. And as always, viva raza, the human race.